The Backdoor GAA Podcast for 2023 is now brought to you by Steede Motor Group. For your personalised vehicle shopping experience, visit steedemotorgroup.ie. We are now delighted to announce our second sponsor of the podcast. Harper Finlay are a professional service recruitment company operating nationwide and are dedicated to helping people find their dream job.
So delighted now to be joined by former Galway hurler Fergal and former Wexford hurler Malachy Travers to look ahead to Galway versus Wexford in the first round of the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship. That takes place in Pearse Stadium at 4:30 on Saturday. The game being shown live on GAA Go. Coming to you first, Fergal, probably like everyone this week, just kind of hard to wrap your head around the championship is starting this Saturday.
Yeah, Paul, it is. It's this new system takes a little bit of getting used to. You're kind of winding the league down nearly in times past, and championship would be more kind of later in the summer. But I'd imagine from a player's point of view, it's brilliant. You know, getting the championship up and running, having a date in early in the diary, I'd say makes the winter training that bit easier. And certainly if I was playing now, this would be exactly what you'd be looking for. The time has just changed. You know, the sun is coming and championship matches around the corner. So it's brilliant, I'd say. Would
you love to play in this system, Fergal?
Absolutely. Yeah. Anything that had you training less and playing more matches sooner in the year, I think just unfortunately came too late for me. But definitely the sooner the championship is on, the better, and less training.
With this as well, Malachy, we obviously had the league, and obviously there was a lot of teams using the league for different aims. Obviously teams weren't going probably all out playing their best 15 week in, week out, because if you look at the next few weeks now, you have your 5 games in Leinster. It's 4 games in Munster, but it's going to be so hectic for these squads, panels and management over the next few weeks.
Absolutely, Paul. Yeah, I think you're right. Firstly, with the league, some of the teams that were that were played, and some of the lineups and stuff like that changed a lot week to week during the league. So you know, you can accuse some of them of being experimental towards the end, especially when they knew their fate, they weren't going to qualify for the semi-final of the league or whatever. But I think as well, for the way that the games now in this round robin series, it's not do or die. Okay, so they are looking to say, like, you know, how can we get to a Leinster final, and that's really the aim for any of these teams. Okay, and I know I suppose for Wexford this weekend, like they're going to have to get off to a good start. Like they do have a good run of games in a way, because, like, you know, on the rankings you'd imagine they every second game is a game that could really target as winnable, and I think that's key for it. But ultimately it's about momentum in this series of games as well, and whatever happens at the weekend, either team will want to go on to the next game having learned something, be improving game on game, so they can, you know, make some kind of an impact on the end of this.
Malachy, is there an unknown for both Galway and Wexford this weekend?
I think the unknown is more on the Wexford side, because they've struggled to kind of string together consistent form since Dara Egan has taken over, which is a bit of a concern. Okay, they've had flashes of really good performances, like last year it's drew Galway, I think, down in Wexford Park in the first game, but then ultimately they lost in Wexford Park the following weekend, the following game to Dublin. So it's kind of been flip-flop, and even the league, they've put in some decent performances and then thrown in a kind of a strange performance. Like the Clare game was notable from that perspective. But I think Galway seem more settled. They seem more targeted what they're more long-term planning. I think Wexford really need to get something out of this to even get the crowd behind them, get something to create some bit of go forward out of the game and get the next game under their belt as well. So I think there's Galway, I would say, they're much more settled from that perspective. Wexford are still trying to search for, you know, where they are, even their pattern, what they're reach, how they're trying to identify themselves now after the Davy era.
What would you see with both teams, Fergal, going into Saturday?
I would say they'll both want to win, obviously, you know, stating the obvious, your first championship match. I suppose from a Galway point of view, the worrying thing for the league, you know, they definitely experimented and blooded a lot of players, and it looked like that's what they were using the league for. But I suppose the worrying thing was that the 2 home games that we did have were Cork and Limerick, and were turned over in both games. I was at the Limerick game and turned over quite easily. So you want to be winning your home games. You know, championship matches, we're long enough looking to get into Leinster. We want home matches. So we have a home match here on Saturday and Wexford are coming to town. So you want to beat them. And, you know, Galway are, you know, David Burke is a huge loss. You know, they're heading into championship now for the first time in many years without David Burke. And that's coming on the back of, you know, losing Joe Canning and Aidan Hart and Johnny Cohen and other leaders like that, you know, fairly recently as well. So it's a big game from a Galway point of view, and probably there'll be a few debutants and there'll be a few fellas that kind of will have to step up to the mark now that probably didn't have to step up as early in previous years. From a Wexford point of view, just as Malachy was saying there, they were fairly up and down during the league and that, but there is a big performance in Wexford when they string it all together. You know, they have, if you look at their team, they have a good goalie, and right through the team they have a very good spine from Ryan and you know, Damien Reck, and they've got good midfield. They might play Lee Chin centre forward. They've Conor McDonald full forward, and lots of skilled players to work off that spine. So if I was in the Galway camp this week, you know, I'd be taking Wexford very serious. You know, that they have all the ingredients to be a very good team, and they have a good young coach and manager in Dara Egan. And if they get off to a good start in Pearse Stadium, I think they'll have a big say in the Leinster Championship. So I think they have a lot of potential. There's some unknowns with them, but they have all the ingredients to make this a very good Leinster Championship for themselves. But from a Galway point of view, you know, I'd be hopeful that we'd have enough experienced lads left, and with a good sprinkling of young talent coming through, that we'd have enough to take the win on Saturday.
Just on David Burke there, Fergal, it's a hammer blow of an injury for Galway, and you've played with David for years with Galway. What necessarily are you losing there? Because you're still feeling the competitor David Burke is. He's still going to be around that dressing room, having an impact in this Galway squad.
Yeah, I suppose it's the leadership really that he brings, and you know, he's a great organizer on the pitch. So, you know, he's almost like another manager on the pitch. And, you know, it's kind of the unseen stuff that a player like that does. You won't notice it until it's gone, until it's not there, and, you know, stuff isn't being organized. So, you know, there's enough lads there, Joe Cooney and Dahi and lads like that can, you know, that can make sure that stuff is organized. But it's all the little things like that, the communication, the organization, and then just his all-round leadership, really. You know, if you're a younger player in the dressing room and you're going out on that pitch and you look across the dressing room and you see David Burke there, you know, it makes the task seem slightly easier. And again, you know, the obvious things really, like always good for a score when the tide was turning or needed to be turned. So as I say, it's a great opportunity for somebody else to step up and take that leadership role. But that's the main thing that they'll miss from him.
Fintan Burke seems to be a huge concern as well. Going into this weekend, he's picked up a serious hamstring injury. Hard to know will he play. Colin Mannion is probably another unknown as well, and missed the majority of the league. But with that as well, Malachy, Wexford have their own concerns on the injury front as well. It looks like Damien Reck and Matt O'Hanlon are two serious doubts this weekend.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think you could add Liam Ryan to the list. He missed the last couple of league games as well, and I think much like David Burke, I think Matt O'Hanlon, if he's not in the Wexford team at the weekend, I think that's a huge blow to them, because he offers something similar to Wexford. He's that anchor, he's that kind of leadership, he has the experience. And he's been playing really well over the last couple of years. You could say 3 years ago you were starting to doubt, you know, how much longer he can stick it. But he's after reinventing himself somehow and put in like a couple of great years for Wexford. I think he'll be a huge loss if he doesn't play this weekend, and I really hope he does, because again, he's a man that often gets assigned, you know, man marking job for Wexford. He often picks up TJ Reid against Kilkenny. I've been surprised if he took up someone like Conor Whelan the next day if he plays. Again, that's a huge concern to Wexford. But I think. It's very important for Wexford to get all those players onto the pitch at some stage together. And I think even if you look back during the league, Lee Chin wasn't there, and they lack that leadership that he brings, or even the energy he brings to the pitch. So
would you say there, Malachy, just sorry now to jump in, but with some of those injuries they have, and you talk about how important it is for these Wexford players to all be on the pitch, would you say that the depth isn't there if Wexford lose 2 or 3 of their top players?
we've been heavily reliant on him, yes. But again, I think to be fair to Dara Egan, what he's done over the last couple of years, and especially this year during the league, he's given so many guys opportunities, but not just a single opportunity. He's actually persisted with them over a number of games to really almost say, look, you have 3 games coming up. It seems like that from the outside looking in, that he's actually, he's really invested in some of these guys like Charlie McGuffey and Conor Hearn, and they've responded as well, because they're probably they're not really looking over their shoulder. So I think he's done a lot. This year, especially his first year as post Davy, he's kind of trying to almost deprogram the guys from Davy and put his own print on things. Where this year, I think he's really looked to try actually, cast that net out again, to try, build back up that talent pool that's kind of, to flow in to replace some of these guys or even put them under pressure. So right now, we probably don't have the experience on the bench. We don't have, that game time that, at the moment. But I think that has to come from somewhere. And like, I'd love to see some of these guys starting to do well at the weekend as well, because then that would reinforce, I suppose, what's just happened during the league as well. And another point as well, and I'm probably just reminding myself of it, a lot of the Wexford guys were injured during the league as well, which, we put that into context. So maybe that's the unknown that's coming into this weekend about, what are Wexford going to turn out like in championship now, which is interesting as well. Like, they keep us all on our toes.
Is that a risk, Malachy, to play players this weekend that mightn't be 100%?
Absolutely, and I actually hope if Matt O'Hanlon is playing, that, like, I'm zoning in on him. Like, Liam Ryan is actually as important to Wexford, because he's been fullback for years, and I'm not sure we have a second fullback, to be quite honest, because he's been a stalwart there for the last. I mean, I don't know what age he is now, but he's probably in his late 20s. But it's been can't think of anyone other than Matt O'Hanlon has played in that position over the last 10 years. So again, 2 very important guys, but it's a huge risk if he plays and he's not right. And I don't think they will do that because of the series of games that's coming up, okay? Because, like, whatever happens this weekend, there's another game coming up next against, I think Antrim is second up. So, again, I think it's a huge risk. And, we're hearing some noise today that, Matt O'Hanlon might be a touch and go for the weekend. So, and I hope he doesn't, I hope they don't risk him if he's not, or hasn't got the game time under his belt.
Yeah, and just on the goal injury front there, before I switched over to Malachy, I know Fintan Burke, the word has it that he's only probably resumed straight line running in the last few weeks. So, I don't know, do you think it'll be hard to, do you think Cathal Mannion and Fintan Burke could feature this weekend, or do you think it'll come too soon?
Oh, it's hard to know without being there, without knowing the severity. I know Cathal Mannion went down early in the league, and we didn't see Fintan Burke at all. But with the series of games that you're looking at, like, if you even got a dead leg on Saturday, you're up against it. In times past, you'd roll your ankle, get a dead leg, and you'd have a couple of weeks to recover. But, like, the games come thick and fast. Like, it's brilliant to have the games, and you're not training as a player, it's mighty. But the only thing is, if you pick up a knock at all, then you're under the cosh immediately. You don't have the recovery time, and all of a sudden then you're facing into another huge match again. So with that in mind, I don't think you can afford to play a player that's not 100%, unless you're in your first game, you're taking a massive risk that they'll break down, and if they do break down and it's severe enough, you can probably write off the other 4 games with it. So you'd really want to be going all out to win your first match if you were going to risk a player like that. I think if there's any doubt about them at all, it's far better to keep your powder dry and get them right, because it could derail their whole championship. And you have them since before Christmas, and you're minding them for this series of games. So I think to risk it all on the first match, if they're not 100%, probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
As well, Fergal, there's probably a decision to be made. Wexford and Galway playing in the under-20 on Friday night. Seniors obviously playing each other then on Saturday. There's now this 7-day rule. If you're involved with the 20s, you can't be involved with seniors as well within a week. But then if it goes out further in a week, you can be involved. That's another big decision to make between the 20s and seniors management.
It is, and it's just another wrinkle to throw into this series of games as well. Can you pull them from one and then not play under 20 but keep them for the senior match, or do you let them play the under 20 and then you can't have them for the senior? So it's like, I don't know who'd be a manager with all the new rules that are coming in with the series of games. It's a tricky one, but like, from an injury point of view, again, if you picked up something in the under-20 match that was a slight niggle, like in times past, you could get it right or get it almost right, but like any kind of risk or doubt at all, I mean, you'd probably be thinking of resting the player and recuperating, because if it goes into something more severe, you could just jeopardize the whole series of games for the player.
Now, the only thing is there, Malachy, Galway playing Wexford in the under-20 on Friday night. It looks like Dublin could top that group. They're obviously in the group with Dublin, Kilkenny, Galway and Wexford. All four do make it into a Leinster quarter-final, but it'll just depend on their seeding. So maybe the seniors might take preference this weekend for those under-20 players if they're to make the 26.
Perhaps, yeah. And last week's results, when they lost to Dublin, kind of really flipped it on its head for Wexford, because they beat Kilkenny in the first game and then lost to Dublin last week. So again, that's a very important game tomorrow night. Again, if you're talking about seedings for the next, for the, let's say the Leinster semi-final or whatever that is. So that's going to be really important. Again, I'm not really sure who's going to be impacted from that, or will that situation actually develop over the next couple of weeks where, okay, get over the game tomorrow night, but the next round is crucial because then you'll know where you're going to qualify in the under 20. So maybe that situation might not play out tomorrow night, but it will in the next few weeks after that.
Just to bring you in here, Malachy, what has been your perception of Galway hurling looking from the outside under Henry Shefflin's reign?
I think again, first year, if you think about it, like Galway have been like they've an immense amount of talent, and I think it's trying to blend all that together. I think Joe Canning retiring I'm saying this like he is an absolute legend. His timing was difficult for Henry, let's say, okay. So now Henry had to come in, take that on the chin, but also try reinvent that team, try add that extra bit of if you like that hunger back into them, and like they've put in good performances. And I think even last year Limerick beat them or whatever. I think they've shown that they have the capability to contend at that level with Limerick, because we're all comparing everything to Limerick, okay. What I think with Henry is, I feel when I looked at some of the games this year that the style of play was slightly, it just didn't seem to have that flow. So obviously they're working a lot, and it goes back to Fergal's point. A lot of the teams might have been experimental in the league. They're trying out fellas. I'm just not quite sure they've actually found their true identity, if you like, under Henry. But one of the things I have noticed about Galway is they're scoring heavily. They're putting big scores up. And I think that bodes well to Anthony, because, once you're scoring, you can probably shore it up at the back. But if you're not scoring, that's a big problem. And they have a lot of guys, and maybe he's bringing that from a Kilkenny perspective. Like, they were always heavy on the scoreboard as well, like that. They could concede plenty, but they'll always be delivering big score lines. So I think from that perspective, say Henry to come back after year one, we'll probably think, look, we did challenge Limerick, didn't beat them, but challenge Limerick. Now it's a case of how can they actually bring that forward in year two. That would be my assessment of them. Like, it looks like a bit of, in a way, a project. It's developing, but I really think this year there'll be question marks about getting what success can they achieve? Can they get to an All-Ireland final? That will really be the question mark around Galway this year, I would say.
Very good. Malachy begged the question there, can they get to an All-Ireland final? In your eyes, can they?
Of course they can, yeah. Why not? Go through the front door and you're into a semi-final. So when you're provincial, you're straight to a semi and you're playing a provincial champion then, and you can take it from there. But go to a semi-final 50-50, of course they can. There's still enough sprinkling of experienced players in that team in every line. And yeah, there has been retirements and lads that have stepped away and probably brought more sharply into focus now when something like the David Burke injury happens, where you're kind of banking on having that person around for another year to steady the ship, and they're gone. But it's an opportunity for someone to step up, and for some of the younger lads now to mature, and they definitely can. That they start their home game. I think their second game and their last game are huge. They're playing Kilkenny away and they're playing Dublin away, and regardless of whether you need to get the result there or not, they're matches you want to be winning, and if you're winning those matches, then you'll be there at the business end of the championship.
And what kind of style do you see with this Galway team, Fergal?
God, it's hard to figure out any style now watching a team. You know, I went to the Galway Limerick match in the league, and it's gone so tactical that sometimes you wonder, being a modern day player, how hard is it with the amount of decisions you have to make? You know,
Have you seen a big change from when you retired to now?
Oh, completely. Yeah, it's sure. Like, if you look at where I played cornerback, like, you know, it was a solid day out if you kept Richie Hogan to maybe a point or two, or kept the possessions down. But
If
now,
you're playing, you'd nearly need to score a point.
now if you're cornerback, you probably have to have a point or two after your name and probably 53 possessions, and you'll definitely have passed the opposition 65 on a couple of overlap runs, and that's nearly the done thing at this stage. But it's just gone so tactical, you know, like, everyone will be playing a +1 at the back at some stage, and they'll drop out of that and they'll go man for man, and you'll have backs attacking, you'll have forwards dropping. Puck outs are way more tactical. They're short, they're long. So from a Galway point of view, you know, I do see them still struggling with the puck out. You know, I think they really struggled with it that day against Limerick. You know, Kyle Hayes had a great day that day. They had Dan Morrissey was centre back as well, and they couldn't make any inroads. They rained some ball down on top of Keenan Fahey and got no return for it, and it looked to be really Conor Cooney was the option all the time. And I see that as the kind of it was a real work on from that game that I took, that Galway were struggling for primary possession, and you know, so much of your game plan feeds off that. Like, if you're not winning your puck out, and then it's very hard to build the play from there. But what do you see from Galway? You see what you see from most teams. You know, they're tactically trying to match up. They sometimes play a sweeper when they have to. If the other team drop out, they play short as much as they can through the lines, and then they do hit it long, especially if Conor Whelan is inside. He's well able to win a high ball as well. So it like every other team now, you know, whatever the formation is at any particular time, that seems to dictate how they play. If Conor Whelan or Conor Cooney or these lads are out the half line, they're probably going short and hitting them lads, and if they're inside, they probably go that little bit longer. But like most teams now, they have multiple plans and ways that they play.
And Malachy, like, it's safe to say, like, if you're looking, we're talking about probably Galway and Wexford, 2 contenders here, but Limerick are obviously that bit ahead of everyone at the moment. But are you enjoying watching hurling at the minute?
Not particularly, to be quite honest. And I think a lot of that stems from something that Fergal said, like your cornerback there. A lot of keepers now are just poking the ball to the cornerback, and he's heading on into traffic, and they're trying to create an overlap, and they're doing it time and time again. Okay, and there's a lot of this. I just find that nobody marks each other anymore. I know it's a sweeping generalization, but again, I think that it's the one thing that the Leinster Championship does separate itself from the Munster Championship. The Munster Championship, like, you know, years ago, was like it was huge games, huge stakes. And now it just seems like it's this shooting match, like, from distance, and I just don't find that enjoyable. I think I much prefer the contest. I much prefer when teams do end up.
Is there nearly too much scores?
Yeah, you can look at it. You know, do you blame the management? But I think as well, the ball is traveling so far at the moment. Like, your keepers are hitting the other 21 on a lot of their poke outs if they're any decent poke out. Like, and I just think, am I advocating shortening the poke or shortening the ball or whatever? But like, I think it's become over tactical, and I think a lot of teams get absolutely absorbed into tactics and they forget to go and play at the end of the day. And I think Limerick are playing, I'd say, the game that everybody wants to play, and they're so accurate with that game, and it's just so precise in everything they do. It's just so well put together. And then a lot of teams are trying to get to that, and it just probably doesn't look as good. And I suppose you're always comparing everything to Limerick at the moment. So particularly, I love when teams get into each other, and they'll whether it's 15 on 15 in whichever format, but at least they mark each other. I do appreciate that, but I do not like a keeper poking it out to a loose man and he has a shot and we just repeat that at the other end. I just find that actually is getting quite one-dimensional, and it's a take away from the real values in hurling we have. And I can't say I enjoy a lot of that, to be honest.
It's really sending me down a rabbit hole now. But is there a problem with the sliotar? Like, is it too light at the minute? Like, for the players we have in the inter-county game?
I would say it's too light overall. I just think it seems to go. a guy can just hit a little flick now and it just seems to go 100 yards, and I just kind of go, that's not my memory of it, or maybe I wasn't that good or whatever. But I just think it could be looked at again. It's just, we got to keep evolving. Okay, if you think about it, over the last maybe 20 years now at this stage, guys are so fit, they're so well conditioned, they're so much stronger, that like, and so you can't blame it all on the ball. But again, the game is evolving. You know, is it sustainable at that? I'm not really sure. I just think it could be addressed as something that could very easily be addressed, that we could just, you know, try it again. They tried the yellow ball very easily, that nobody wanted, so why not try a ball that's a slightly heavier ball or something that doesn't travel quite as far? Maybe I think it'd be an interesting one to see.
And how are you finding watching hurling at the minute, Fergal?
It is enjoyable. Look, when it gets to the business end, it is enjoyable, but like similar to Malachy, like I do be scratching my head sometimes, you know, when you're watching a championship match and there's a fella in 50 yards of space and he puts the ball over the bar, and then the ball comes out and someone else is in space and it goes over the bar, and you know, it's called a shootout, but really what it is lads free all over the place. And you know, I'm sure there is tactics and there is game plans that are springing these lads free, but for somebody watching, or particularly the old school that were used to the more one-to-one combat, then like it is harder to watch. But then, you know, I did see Limerick in the flesh there in the league, like, and they are a joy to watch. So like when it is done, when you see how they spring the lads into the 10 or 15 yards of space, or how they create that opening, like it is very good to watch. But I suppose, you know, playing it depends what area you grew up in. I mean, if you're a younger player now and you've been exposed to kind of that level of tactics and that way of play from a young age, then, you know, they're just playing it at senior at a different level. But for the likes of myself or Malachy that kind of played in at a different time, then it's probably harder to get your head around, because it's a totally different way of playing. But like, there's no one way better than the other. But like I'd imagine it is quite enjoyable to play it now, because I'm sure the training is tailored towards that as well. You know, there's probably lends itself to that, which there probably wasn't there in the past. So it depends what you grow up in and what you're used to. But if I was a young lad starting out again, I'd only love to play it, because I'm sure the training is tailored for it, and it probably is quite enjoyable. It was starting to come in when I was finishing up, but the goalie'd give you the ball and the message still hadn't been got down the pitch that you make yourself open, or you might have one lad making himself open. Whereas now when a cornerback gets the ball, you know, there's lads moving everywhere and there's options everywhere, and more often than not there's 5 set plays already set up for them that they're supposed to do anyway. So it's definitely evolved, and it's a lot easier to get a ball now as a cornerback from the goalie than it would have been in times past.
Just there, Fergal, when you said if you're a young lad starting out, you'd love to be playing, do you miss intercounty?
Oh, of course you do. Yeah, sure, it's a great sure, this Saturday now, you'd be rocking into Pearse Stadium in front of a big crowd welcoming Wexford to town, and you know, championship match and the buzz of championship all week. So of course you do. Yeah, you miss the big occasions and the big matches. But yeah, like you did it for so long and enjoyed it for so long, and yeah, if I could go back and do it all again, I definitely would.
Is it hard initially at the start? Like, was it hard for you when you did retire, trying to maybe fill that void of like going out training and just the routine of everything?
It probably would have been if it happened sooner in my career, but I was at the end. Like, I went as far as I could and could go no more, and had got married just the previous season, and we had our first child actually in the February. So say finished up in the October, November, and then first baby arrived then the following February. So that basically fills the void, and after that then you're juggling, and that kind of fills it in. But if it happened probably earlier in my career, when, you know, if I was a single fella or married without children, yeah, I'd say I definitely would have struggled with it. But the way it actually felt for me, family life kicked in, and I've been juggling that ever since. So keeping going with the club, but you know, family takes over. So yeah, like it worked out fine for me. But I would imagine if it had happened at a younger age or a different point in my career, I could definitely have seen myself as struggling with it for sure.
Malachy, just before we get into a couple of the matchups and the game itself, just last week we didn't touch on it in the podcast, and like there's very interesting comments last week about Fergal Horgan. He retired from intercounty refereeing. He's a big loss to hurling in general, because like Fergal Horgan did lead. He let the games flow, which ultimately probably that's what we're talking about when we're saying maybe hurling can be enjoyable. Maybe sometimes it can be stop-start by some referees, but a big blow to the hurling community to lose a ref like him.
Oh, it's a massive blow, and again, the guy had I think he had everybody's respect. He had the supporters' respect. He had the players' respect. He handled the games well. He's a huge loss, and I think, yeah, there seems to be a bit of let's say blowback from that one, since he's stepped back from it, which is disappointing too. And yeah, you have a point. There's a lot of whistle happy referees out there again, but they're on the instructions of the the overseeing committees and stuff like that. So we'd all like to see the game flow, and I think we like to see contests. We like to see a good, without getting over macho at it, like you'd like to see, two guys go at it in a fair way and let it happen. Okay, we don't want to see the whistle. We don't want to see a free taking match either. Like Fergal said as well, we don't have players just shooting from all over the place. So Fergal's a huge loss. Again, you would actually think to yourself, like, he would have been one of the first people you would have said who's going to referee the All-Ireland at the start of the year. It's probably going to be Fergal Horgan, depending on who gets to the final. You'd actually struggle now to say who the handful of people would be. Like, so he's a top referee, and it's disappointing to see him have. It looks and sounds like that he felt he had to step back from it.
Is that the biggest thing you want to see over this championship, of just as you said there, letting it flow and two lads going at it in a fair manner?
Absolutely. I think everyone, and I think it makes for a better product. Okay, we don't like this stop-start, this flashing cards for everybody. Like, there's a way of dealing with it, and there's an opportunity there for referees as well to, I suppose, step up now, because there's an opening for now that Fergal Horgan is gone. There's an opening for other referees to step up now and be the big game referees. So yeah, we want to see that. We want to see good games, and referees make for good games. And it'd be great as well, when we're talking about games after the weekend, that we're not talking about referees in a negative way either. That it produces a good game for everybody, and lack of controversy. That's ideally, and I suppose any referee wants that as well. A game to go by, good game, no controversy. And that's start with controversy before the game started.
Just before we get into the game and matchups, I'm going to ask both of you your three teams to get out of Leinster. Coming to you first, Fergal, who do you think it's going to be?
I'll tell you after Saturday. Sure, like you'd have to say on paper, like it'll be Galway, Kilkenny and Wexford. But, Dublin, depending how Wexford get on Saturday, depending how Dublin get on in their matches, like Micheál Donoghu's gone up there with Franny Ford and Noel Larkin, and a very, very impressive CV, all three.
You probably wouldn't be surprised to see Dublin do something this year with them, would you?
I absolutely wouldn't, because I know the kind of setup that Micheál will install anywhere that he goes. And Franny is from my own club. He's a brilliant coach, and Noel Larkin, I've been coached very little by him, but by all accounts he's excellent as well. The bit I had dealings with him, he's very good. I suppose the worry they'd have in Dublin is kind of the personnel, that they kind of lost a good bit of experience themselves this year, and they're kind of on the rebuild. But kind of similar to Wexford, they have enough kind of ingredients to put together a really good Leinster championship if it goes their way. And I look at the fixtures here in front of me. They have 3 home matches, so it gives them a good chance. Wexford have 3 home matches as well. They've Antrim, Westmeath and Kilkenny, but Dublin have Westmeath, they have Wexford at home, and they've Galway at home. And the Wexford and Galway ones are in Croke Park. So it just puts a little asterisk beside them. I'd be very interested to see. I don't think it's a given that it'll be those 3 teams on paper. I'd say yes, but I would say Dublin are an unknown quantity at the moment, and they have the potential to get into one of them slots.
What 3 are you seeing getting out of Munster then, Fergal?
Hard to know. Like you'd say Limerick for sure. Tip looked good as well, and like after that, Clare had kind of a funny league, but they're a championship team, and what they did last year. They ran Limerick very, very, very close, all but beat them. and then you have Cork with their new management that, you know, came up to Pearse Stadium and gave Galway a good hiding, which not a lot of teams do. And I know they fizzled out towards the end of the league, but that's a bear pit down there. I mean, you'd say Limerick may be tip, but I wouldn't be betting on it on any game, to be honest with you.
Malachy, coming to you then. Are you along similar lines with Fergal for the three teams to get out of Leinster? Or obviously you've coached in Dublin as well, so do you think Dublin can do something this year in Leinster as well?
I think potentially they can. Like, I would agree with Fergal. I see it as Kilkenny, Galway and Wexford in that order, okay? The one big question mark I have around Dublin is they've nominated Croke Park as their home venue for 2 of those games, and I couldn't believe they did that. I really couldn't believe that, because Parnell Park is a place that they love playing. They're able to generate an atmosphere in that place to really, really intimidate teams and make it their own. And I think they really identify strongly with that ground. And bringing it to Croke Park may actually play into Galway's hands, for example. And I couldn't believe they made that choice. That's just something now. But as well, that's the last round of games. Galway will play Kilkenny in Croke Park, I think, and Wexford play Kilkenny. And that is in Wexford, I think. So that's going to be a very interesting again when it comes to the last weekend. That could decide which third team to qualify. So that will be my 3 teams coming out of Leinster, but it makes for an interesting few weeks coming up.
And for Munster, Malachy?
For Munster, yeah, look, Limerick are the team. I'm really impressed by Clare. I think Clare are the other team that could, like, you know, and I think they just seem to be developed. They're settled. They have this and they're improving as well. And like I said, they had a great performance last year against Limerick in the championship. Tip are really, really good. New manager Liam Cahill, like, I think they'll third team that will come out with. But again, you've Cork and Waterford then. Waterford are completely unknown because they didn't have a good league. Davies down there, it's quite quiet, which is strange. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them in the Munster Championship now, how they're going to come out, because they have a huge talent. Liam Cahill was doing a very good job with them as well. And he's gone to Bray now. Cork are, again, quite frankly, I just don't. I'm not sure they're quite there yet. I think the other teams are further ahead of them. I think they're likely to be beaten any one day. I'm just not sure they have that. We'll go back to the likes of David Burke type character, that they're real anchor in their team that's just going to add that consistent performance day in, day out. I'm not sure they're there yet, but they're hugely talented. They're improving. I'm just not quite sure they're a championship team, though. I'm just not sure they're a team that's going to come to knock at hurling. They're going to do something, quite frankly.
Would you have any pre-match rituals now, Fergal, in the lead up to your first championship game in a particular year?
No, I've never, like, I wasn't one for superstitions anyway, but like, I suppose you'd be ticking boxes. So I mean, like, you'd be making sure you get to the ball, or you'd have certain things you do, certain people you'd be avoiding and things like that, just the week of a championship match. But no, to be honest, I'm not one of these lads. You read about people that had to eat a certain thing or wear certain socks or sit a certain side of the dressing room. I was never that, really. It was more just ticking the box to kind of have your game work done, have your ball done, and whatever happens at the weekend then happens. But nothing really in particular.
Did you ever forget anything for a particular match?
Did I? No. I'd kind of I'd be prepared, maybe over prepared. I'd be the one lending maybe the insulating tape rather than borrowing it. Put it that way before a match.
Do you have any rituals, Malachy?
The rituals are a creature of habit. I used to rewind it back to when I performed of, what did I do in the lead up to that run. So if that became a superstition over time, yes, I did. Guilty as charged. But yeah, I'm very much a creature of habit. Just try to, approach games consistently, no matter what they were, just so then when it came to it, you were in that habit of preparing for big games. Maybe not that superstitious, but definitely I repeated things that maybe when I thought I performed well, I would do them again. So I would say I was kind of superstitious, maybe, if you want to put it like that. Yeah.
Would you be excited, Malachy, yourself now, or nervous in the lead up to a game like this?
It's more apprehension. That's what I always felt like. You just mad for the game to get on. Like, you have to wait around till Sunday afternoon was a long time. I always felt like, you're trying to pack in time, trying to keep yourself busy, not do too much, but do something, that kind of stuff. So I wasn't overly nervous, but just edgy, I would say, a weekend of a big game, and just I kind of couldn't wait till it came time, to get on the bus and go to Dublin or wherever we were going to go. So not that nervous. Like once I got on the bus, it was kind of like, right, we're going now, and there's a game on here. I suppose you build that over time as well. So I wasn't that nervous, no. Just more like just that edginess and crankiness coming up to a game.
Would you get a buzz in a game like this weekend now, leading up to Fergal?
You would, yeah, definitely. Championship is just different. You're doing your pre-season, and we got into Leinster, then you had your pre-season competitions, and you had your league. But I mean, it's different gravy this time of year. Training is different. In my time anyway, you started when the time changed. You started moving to Kenny Park and Athenry for training, and that's when the championship was coming, and the grass is freshly cut, and you're out on the pitch, and there's places up for grabs. So this time of the year, it always feels different. The training just goes up at a level. It goes up in speed, and it goes up in competitiveness, because everyone wants to get on the team. So there's always a buzz around for championship. There's a buzz in training, and there's a buzz in the general public. There'd be people coming into training, they'd be watching training, more people talking to you about the game. And particularly the way the system is now, like you've 5 games now to look forward to for championship, at least, for sure. It's only last weekend I was talking about the old system. It was almost like when I started out, it was like 2 separate championships. We watched everyone else play their championship, and then we rocked in to play a preliminary quarter-final when it was all said and done, and try and you lose that, then you're knocked out and you're gone till the following year again. So it's way better system now for like to be a Galway hurler, like to have that many matches and to have home matches and away matches in big stadiums this time of the year. It's brilliant time to be a Galway senior hurler.
Both teams as well, Fergal. This has been referenced since the start of the year for both teams, and on numerous occasions, you can be sure as well.
Oh yeah, like this is where it's at, really. I mean, that both teams will be aiming for the Leinster Championship. Like you have to get through the front door, get straight into an All-Ireland semi-final. So everybody wants to start well and get some momentum going, and hopefully carry that on to the next game. But that's what it's all about. I mean, there's nobody gathers at the start of the year and talks about winning a pre-season competition, or you might reference the league, but at the back of everyone's mind, it's this date was etched in stone, and everything that you do from the time you meet before Christmas is aimed at this date on Saturday.
What kind of game can we expect on Saturday, Malachy?
I think it's probably going to take a while to settle. I don't think teams are going to come out and they're going to be really fluid. Because again, I suppose those early games, I just don't think teams are going to reveal their full hand, etc. But again, I think what you're going to find is very, very quickly, once it settles in, it's going to be very clear that it's such an important game for both teams to win, because of what's going to happen afterwards. They're going to get momentum out of it. And you could think about it like if Galway or Wexford, whoever wins by game 3, you could actually be potentially, top of the group and qualified, and then you can, it's in your own hands. So I think it's going to be a bit edgy to start with. It's going to take a while to settle, and then as the game develops, then we might see some patterns. But I just think, first of all, no team is going to want to go out there and leave the back door open. It's going to be a bit edgy. They'll probably, like Fergal referenced earlier on, play a +1 at the back, and just make sure they're in the game by half time, and then try, obviously, kick on from there. I think we're not going to see all guns blazing from the word go, because everyone's going to be a little bit edgy. It's been a couple of weeks since the last league game and stuff like that. Even the ground, go back to your point about Kenny Park and Athenry, the ground has changed so much since Wexford played their last game down in Cork. So that was a horrible wet day. So now they're coming to more drier, better ground. It's just, I like I said, I think it's going to take a while for them to settle. Once they get into their flow, then we're going to see their true colours from there on.
Just on that, Malachy, have you seen an evolution with this Wexford team since the Davy Fitz era now in year 2 in Claregalway, or do you still think there's a similar style there?
I think it's quite a similar style. again, I would say introducing some new players who haven't played that is probably where, you know, some things were broke down. I know particularly some of the games, like there's a lot of stuff broke down, particularly in the Clare game. But again, you can use that as the outlier because they obviously were going through a heavy training period. For me, it was a game that they should have actually targeted to win because it was down in Wexford. And Clare have beaten them. I don't know the exact stats, Paul, but like I think Clare have beaten them in 4 or 5 championship matches, you know, the last few years as well. So that was a game I think Wexford should have targeted. But going back to your point, I think, you know, they do like to carry the ball out from the goalkeeper, from the poke out. They like to carry it out to the next man. They try to create an overlap in midfield and go on from there to try to get the ball in. So it's quite a slow build. And so, yes, it's quite similar to Davies, but probably just, it's not as rigid, I would say, as what Davy would have had them playing.
Just on that then, Fergal, to me it seems on a couple of occasions when Galway have faced Wexford that they actually don't seem to struggle against a sweeper system. If anything, it's nearly encouraging Galway they nearly go with just shooting from points from distance, and that's ultimately how they look at breaking it down.
Yeah, I think all are well used to playing against teams now that play sweepers, particularly the goal threat we carried over the years, and you know, having forwards of caliber, Joe Canning knocking about, you know, all are well used to having packed defenses, and they're well equipped to deal with it. You know, if they're able to go along and win it inside, depending on what personnel are there, and they're well able to play the short game. Cathal Mannion, these guys are well able to play the short game around the middle. And the likes of Cathal Mannion, Jason Flynn, you know, Pádraig Mannion, all well able to shoot from distance. Conor Cooney can shoot left and right. You know, we're talking about a light Schlitter, but any lad there, Tom Monaghan, these lads, they can hit a score over the bar on the run from 100 yards, no problem. So Galway are well able to play it short, they're well able to play it long, and they can mix and match it either way. They have the personnel to do that.
Earlier, Fergal, you talked about maybe Galway struggle with puckouts. Joseph Cooney has been deployed at wing back. Is he someone you'd move up to wing forward for an option for the puckouts, or do you leave him where he is? Now, I know there's this thing about the backs at the moment. I'd say if you ask a lot of people from Galway, nearly everyone has a different opinion on it, because your own clubman Dolly Burke's at 6, people will talk about him at 3. Same with G Mac. Like, there just seems to be a lot of debate around that area of the pitch at the minute for Galway.
Yeah, and again, I think some of that, you know, Dahi was injured for a lot of the league, so some of that was kind of by necessity rather than design. You see, Fintan Burke is out, Dahi was out. That's 2 out straight away, and you kind of have to try and plug the gaps then and experiment and see what you have. But as regards Joseph Cooney, I mean, he's a victim of his own talent, really. You know, you could play him anywhere, and he's an exceptional hurler. And you know, I saw him recently, and he's got himself into unbelievable shape. You know, the last year or two, his conditioning is unbelievable. So that was kind of the final piece of the jigsaw for him. So,
what kind of character is Joseph Cooney around the place?
Joe is quiet. You know, he lets his hurling do the talking. You know, he's you know, he's sound man, and you know, he's well able to have the laugh as well. But you know, he will be quiet, and he does all his talking on the pitch, and he's well able.
For you, would you say Joseph Cooney is one of Galway's most important players? Is he one of these players who hasn't got the plaudits for the work he does nationally? Like nationally, from a perspective like of Joseph Cooney being underrated.
Yeah, like I'd agree. If you're to look at, you know, the body of work that he's done in his career, in the different positions that he's done them at the time he's been asked to do them, yes, he's been an unbelievable servant for Galway. But I think sometimes it can be undervalued because he's, you know, if he'd spent the whole time doing the same performances in the one position, like say Dahi Burke has, then, you know, he probably would get more plaudits. But, you know, there was a time there under Mihal where, you know, he went back, he was wing forward, won All Ireland wing forward, and all of a sudden he's wing back, you know, man marking, and was man of the match, you know, and that's just the type of character it's the talent that he has. I think he's been an unbelievable player for Galway, and it would be appreciated more if it was all in the one position, but it's just been in different positions at different times. But as I say, he's really in his prime now. You know, he's vice captain. He's really grown into that leadership role, and he has himself in brilliant shape. So there's plenty more miles left on the clock for him for Galway as well.
And there's a few decisions to be made, obviously. It'd be interesting to see how Galway do line up from a defensive perspective. Probably then with a forwards perspective from Wexford, Malachy, it's an interesting one as well. You're kind of looking at the main three of Rory O'Connor, Lee Shane and Conor MacDonald. Where do they line out at the weekend?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's what the will. It was interesting actually because Rory O'Connor played midfield against Cork in the last league match, but I think that wasn't so much tactical, but it was his first game back for a while to give him a run around. But I do like to see him out there, so he could be picked at 13 or 15 and play outside. And yeah, I expect Conor Mac to line up, at full forward, and then Leach in at centre forward, obviously playing a deep role as well. But I think then you probably have two newcomers as well, potentially like Charlie McGuckin, who's played well during the league and son of Shane McGuckin from Offaly actually, and then Conor Hearn as well as another guy from Michelle Mears club as well, and he's played very well as well. I think he's probably going to make it in at number 10 as well. Who knows? Again, I think the team probably won't come out till later tonight maybe, but that's what it looks like, and I think it's going to be important. Again, who plays outside is going to be interesting. Who comes in, who's a new starter. So I think it's all very interesting from Wexford perspective. Like I said, I hope we get all our players back on the pitch, and get a bit of a bounce out of this game, because the league was very much hit and miss. And I do think Wexford need to start. I think they need to start this well. And actually, it just reminded me as well there. This time last year, I think both teams drew in Wexford Park, isn't that right? And you could actually see that you could actually see after that match that Henry was absolutely seething with that, because they lost the lead that day. And I think next week, if there's any, I think he'll be baying for ball. I think he'll want to put a dagger in Wexford early here. So it's just going to be an interesting game. I just think, and I think there's a lot on the line for both teams. Like I said, I think and whoever gets a win out of this could be a done deal by game 3 or game 4.
Malachy, just on that, what are the key matchups for Wexford this weekend, and who are the players that are going to pick up, say, Conor Whelan and Brian Kincannon inside? They seem like probably the two most important matchups for Wexford this weekend.
Yeah, depending on where Conor Whelan plays, and if he does pick up in the full forward line, it's going to be Liam Ryan, I would say. And then Matt O'Hanlon could pick him up as well. It just depends. Brian Kincannon, you'd imagine Damien Wright probably is going to slip over and pick him up. The matchups are absolutely key. Not sure that the rest of the Galway forwards again. Like Tom Monaghan again, dangerous player. You can't let him go loose either. But I'm not sure there's going to be a specific man marking job on him. I think it's going to be whoever lines out going back for Wexford. So yeah, I think they're two crucial guys to tie down. I think Conor Whelan's a pure handful. I just. And what's interesting as well, if you look back over time, Galway haven't scored too many goals against Wexford. I know you mentioned that, Fergal, so they're happy to shoot for points. Probably, again, that's dictated by Wexford actually, clogging up the backs as well and not allowing that traffic to come through. So it will be interesting to, see this Henry just switch it up a bit and, start to really unload it into the full forward line a little bit earlier, just to test them. Liam Ryan's been injured. So definitely, I would say Liam Ryan's the man for Conor Whelan. I'd be happy enough for him to be on anybody, and then Damien Wright will take on Brian Kincannon.
What are the key matchups then for Galway this weekend, Fergal?
I suppose it ties into your last point, Paul. I know there's some debate around 3 and 6, for Galway, but I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer really. I think Irish Mack is a better centre back, and I think Galway. Yeah, and not better than Dahi, but as in he's more comfortable at centre back than he is at full back. And I think Dahi, like Galway, need Dahi at fullback, but he's also equally brilliant at centre back, and particularly the way the game is played now, it's crying out for him to be centre forward or to be centre back, because he loves coming on the overlap. He's played football for years with Kerfin, and it's second nature to him. And you'd often see in a club game Dahi'll show up at the end of a sweep and move. He'll show up in the full forward line and he'll be there for the final pass, or he'll give the final pass. So he's very, very comfortable playing out the field in kind of the way hurling is played now, with backs attacking and someone will cover you and you go on the run. So he showed that against Clare. When he was down in Ennis that day, he was centre back and he's over 2 points and he'd no problem doing it. But I just think for stability for Galway, I think the whole backs are built around him when he's at 3, and Galway need him there whether he likes it or not. And
He more
Gareth-
than likely pick up Conor Mack, so you'd imagine.
yeah, I think so. But having said all that now, I don't think it'll matter much for Saturday where either of them play, because they're going to be on massive players. So if Dahi was 6, you're going to have to man mark Lee Chin. If Gareth Mack is 6, you're going to have to man mark Lee Chin. It's as simple as that. So either or, you're going to have to man mark them. And same with Conor McDonald. If Dahi is on him, he's going to have to win the physical battle and keep the ball out of his hand. If it's Gareth Mack, then he's going to have to do the same thing. It's a different kettle of fish if you're playing the likes of Limerick and you're talking about an Aaron Gillan versus a Seamus Flanagan versus Hegarty versus a Morrissey. They're totally different types of players, but I think for 11 and 14 for Galway for the matchups, just whoever does it, Lee Chin, just has to be kept to freeze and give him as few frees as possible and try and minimise him from play. He's a huge puck out option for Wexford. He's got a good hand on him. And the same with McDonald. Then he wants high ball, and he wants to play the man, catch the ball, and he'll go for goal. He's got an eye for goal. So the two big matchups that I see, I mean, Rory O'Connor's a brilliant hurler. Galway
Grealish will probably follow him, will he?
Galway have good man markers. Jack Grealish is very, very sticky. The way the game has gone now, your best athletes are generally in the full back line. And if you look at the Galway team, Jack Grealish is very, very quick over 10 yards. Darren Morrissey is very, very quick. Dahi is extremely quick, very, very good in the air. So there's good athletes back there, whoever's left corner. But I'd say Jack Grealish should be the one to pick up Rory O'Connor, and he'll follow him everywhere till he goes back on the team bus, I'd say.
Galway look to have solved maybe last year against that game in Limerick. They did miss a few frees late on. Evan Island looks to come in now, and Evan Island is one of those 95% free takers who's going to score the majority of frees he takes. But Malachy, free taking, you have to be said, has been an issue for Wexford. Have they solved that, or do you still think it's a bit of an issue?
Once Lee Chin is on the pitch, I think we've a recognised free taker. If Lee Chin isn't on the pitch, I think we're going to really struggle. Okay, absolutely, it's a problem area. And again, go back to the nature of the games. A lot of traffic in midfield. It's a free takers. There's a lot of frees generated in any of these games, and you got to be scoring them. Like you said, 95% hit rate is what you expect. So I would say, there's still always a question mark, but I think Lee Chin has done amazing work to get actually his accuracy levels up. But yes, it is an issue for us, and we saw that during the league when Lee Chin wasn't playing, there wasn't another recognised, or let's say, free taker at the level you would expect.
Fergal, for you, what's the deciding factor, and who's going to win this on Saturday?
I mean, it has to be Galway from my point of view. The home team. I think Henry's done fine since he's come in. He steadied the ship and loaded a lot of players, and got some good performances last year. But I mean, I think back to the Leinster final last year, then was a horror show. And then subsequently went on beat Cork, and then put in a massive performance against Limerick. But I think this Galway team now has to have ambitions now to be winning Leinster and going through the front door to an All-Ireland semi-final. And you've got a home match starting on Saturday. Regardless of who's coming, it is Wexford. But what you want to see is Galway come out on the front foot and go for the game. And as Malachy says, go and put the dagger into Wexford. But you're the home team. You have ambitions on winning the Leinster, the Leinster Championship. So you want to start on the front foot and rack up a big score and hopefully come away with the victory. But that's where I see it. Galway have to come out and chase the game and put their stamp on it and put it to bed, and that's what needs to happen.
Malachy?
Yeah, I think Wexford are going to struggle to get a result in Galway at the weekend. Quite frankly, I just think that Galway are more settled. Wexford have a lot of injury concerns, but they just don't have that consistent form coming into this game, coming out of the league. Yeah, they might have got a bounce at the end of it, when they played Cork and put in a good performance down there. but too late. And I think as well that last year, Galway drawing that game last year, just might have left a bit of a sour taste at the time with Henry, and I don't think he's going to let that situation develop again. I think Wexford, the nature and the way they played over the last few years, are kind of a slow burn, so they're going to try to stay in the game for as long as they can and probably try to get that Wexford crowd behind them to start to build from there. But I think, like you said, Fergal, I think Galway are going to come out and try to put their stamp on the game, and they're try not let that happen and go ahead and try win it and get it done early. So I think this weekend is probably just a jump too far, but you'd like to see Wexford put in a big performance that they can actually get some momentum going up to Antrim in the second round.
And that's all on our hurling show for today. Thanks a million to the lads for coming on, and we'll be back next week with a review of the Galway and Wexford game, and we'll look ahead to Galway and Kilkenny also in round 2.
The Backdoor GAA Podcast for 2023 is now brought to you by Steede Motor Group. For your personalised vehicle shopping experience, visit steedemotorgroup.ie. We are now delighted to announce our second sponsor of the podcast. Harper Finlay are a professional service recruitment company operating nationwide, and are dedicated to helping people find their dream job.